With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoe's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful inns for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more. Welcome, friends and allies, to the Exploring More podcast. My name's Michael Thompson. I'm here with my brother and friend, S.J. Jennings, and again, we have arisen to new levels of podcasting when we bring our brides into the room and let them have their important moments. The subject of this podcast is engaging the hearts of women, and I can't think of two better women than Sherry Jennings, SJ's wife, and Robin Thompson, my wife, to step in and explore this with us a little bit more, engaging the hearts of women. So I'm going to just kick it right off by saying, Sherry, what's going on in the culture with women's hearts? What challenges are women facing? Why engage in the hearts of women? This is something you two talk about all the time. You're passionate about, and I think our listeners would appreciate hearing your hearts for the hearts of women and why you want to engage.
Yeah, and I think I'd say that seeing everything that comes against women, there is so much going on out there. There's so many demands, so much weight on women, so much coming against them that inside they're just dying.
Yeah.
You know, trying to keep up with the schedules of life, the pace of life, the social media of life. You know, everything that the world tells them that they should be, tells us that we should be. And we forget there's nothing in this world who reminds us who we truly are and how we're truly loved and seen. You know, everything is about how much can you accomplish and how well are you doing and, you know, how good looking are your kids and what sports are they in or, you know, whatever message you're picking up and however society and culture is defining women, whether it's a march somewhere or a liberal studies class in a university.
Or Pinterest.
Or Pinterest, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, from every direction, at every age, we're getting this message of not enough. And hearts are dying. We're living in isolation and desolation.
It sounds familiar. When we talk about the hearts of men, we're talking about really the human condition. We're talking about the assault on image bearers, masculine and feminine. So, I mean, all of those things we actually share in common. We're in this war together. We're in this battle together for the heart. And so engaging in the heart is critical. But there's a way that this looks for women and a way that this seems to look for men. We have a lot of common ground. I believe that. But there's some uniqueness in which the assault against the feminine heart comes, and therefore engaging in its restoration, engaging in its healing, engaging in its recovery, you know, going after the hearts of women is something that you guys do and talk about. So what do you think, Robin? Where's your heart go with that big idea, big question?
Yeah, I love what Sherry said, that so much has come against the hearts of women, and our hearts have taken hits from monumental proportions to small hits over time that add up and affect us profoundly in how we move through life, in how we engage in relationships or don't, in how we parent and how we work and come alongside other people. And yeah, this is an important topic. And to know, like Sherry said, who we are. And the thief of comparison is the thief of joy, and how we tend to so often get caught in that trap of comparing with other women. But to know who I am, that my heart matters, and what has come against my heart, and what God wants to do. I mean, to recognize that Jesus has been pursuing my heart all my life, and I haven't seen it. I haven't been aware of it. More recently, being able to see how he's coming for me, his heart for me. Proverbs 14:23 that says, above all else, guard your heart, for from it flows the wellspring of life. And our hearts are vital and they're core. And yet we know so little about them and what has been said against them and what God wants to do to bring healing and freedom to them.
There's an easy observation in the Gospels about Jesus' heart for women, which is probably a whole other podcast, actually. It's a beautiful conversation. I know you do. That's why I brought it up, that how he treated them, how he pursued them, how he engaged in their hearts and made a place for them, a space for them. I mean, this was a culture that I think our culture really has its problems and challenges with where women are in it. And it's just not that long ago, really, that they didn't vote. They didn't have a place in the culture, especially at work. The roles have evolved and changed, and I'm not sure hearts and minds have caught up with that. And I think the enemy continues to do a work. As a father of 3 daughters, we're trying our best, Robin and I, to grow, raise, love, and encourage little lionesses, little warrior princesses, and they're big now. And so what does that look like to set them in a trajectory, in a space with Jesus so that they can recognize when the world's trying to whisper to them who they are, who they aren't, and they can literally defend themselves against such things. Like you said, Proverbs 4:23, guard your heart, and learning how to do that, engaging. So what we love about your roles at Zoe, what you two love to do is create environments to help women in the healing and training that they need, engaging women's hearts with the invitation to healing and training so that they can experience God's nearness, his voice, his love, the kind of transformational things that God does to help us get our hearts back. And particularly environments, I know that you guys have weekly things around here. You guys meet with women all the time here in this Durham, Chapel Hill Triangle area, but things are growing. And there's a weekend that you guys have offered for a few years, but it's starting to be populated by far more than 2 or 3 states now. The Women's Deepening Weekend in the fall in September 6th through 8th. It's a Friday to Sunday weekend, and it's for women. So would you women talk a little bit about the Deepening Weekend and just describe it a little bit? Why is it important to have an environment like that?
The Deepening Weekend is really one of the most powerful and life-changing things that we offer at Zoe. Everyone I know, myself included, has a longing for more life and more joy, more healing, more freedom, more of Jesus. And we want women to know there is more available. And these weekends, we go after the more. Our heart wants more. So what we have found is we really don't need more information about God or more information about the Christian life or how-tos or tips or techniques. What we really, really need is to encounter God, to experience him, and to experience his heart for me, his deep love for me, and to taste and know that he is good and that his heart for me is good, to hear his voice, to see how he's coming for me, these ways that we, with our 5 senses, really, we experience him. And at the Deepening Weekend, we set a table for those things to happen, to invite God to come, and he comes. He really does. And responds to a woman's heart's desire and longing for more.
I love that. I don't want to dial down information all the way off the table because orientation is somewhat about information.
Sure.
I mean, we were just with a woman this past weekend. Robin and I spent quite a bit of time with her, and we were walking through some of the healing journey and some of the things that are in the way of her receiving God's love. And it was information. We weren't teaching, but she was being taught very much about some things that she did not know about the kingdom, about how it works, and the information that you need to experience what you're talking about, experiencing God's love. So there was information that needed to be deprogrammed and in some ways unsubscribed in her life. And then there was an invitation to the truth and the invitation to experience that. So all of that together, because I've been to the Deepening Weekend. I'm one of the few men, SJ and I are two of the few men who have been to this weekend. And I would say, Robin, that everything you said is true, and the information, the teaching around it is so inviting and so important. the men talk about nothing to hide, nothing to prove, nothing to fear. What if we could be an oriented man?
Yeah.
I don't see it being any different. Why
Nope.
would a woman not
Want those things.
want
Absolutely.
nothing to hide, nothing to prove, nothing to fear as a woman uniquely? And we are distinguishing a little bit between men and women. And yet we have such common ground, like we said at the beginning of the podcast. Sounds familiar.
Yeah, no doubt.
Sounds familiar.
No doubt. Sherry, what do you have to say on the subject?
I loved what you said, Robin. And I understand what you're saying, Michael. And I'm thinking about my first time. And when I went to the Deepening Weekend for the first time in 2010, it was truly like stepping through the wardrobe and into Narnia. It was an awakening. It was a greater awareness. It was having eyes to see and ears to hear. And it was that balance of information and experience and having the eyes to see and the ears to hear so I could experience. And it was like having a new pair of glasses, being able to see my life so incredibly differently and so uniquely. He came from my heart as only he could for only my heart. And I know that he came for the hearts of friends and so many other women that I've talked to since that first time in 2010 so incredibly differently than he came from my heart, because he knew what my heart needed in the midst of that invitation into more. And he knows that my heart is different than Robin's heart, is different than Rebecca's heart, is different than Dana's heart.
That's a great turn into, if you could describe a little bit about what makes the Deepening Weekend different. I just want to reiterate what you both said. You're different. I mean, the women in the seats are so different. Their stories, though they're all women and they share that in common, but they can be in such different spaces. And so cookie cutter, getting everybody in the same line is not the Deepening Weekend. I know it's not. But getting everybody somewhat in the same space with assumptions that we've all been lied to, that's
Been
what the
brilliant
enemy
at that.
does.
Mm-hmm.
And he lies to you, about God, and about others. So to give some common things in the weekend, and yet, I like what you said, your friends being so different in different places, it's customized. How do those same tools get customized for different women in the weekend? So describe the weekend, if you would, just a little bit of what makes it different. Why is this so unique, the Deepening Weekend? And then we can talk a little bit more about what happened to you and what the invitation is for women.
Well, what I love about it and how the weekend flows, which is a place that I live in and taking care of schedules and such, is every session you'll hear from women who are walking in this, who are experiencing this, who are seeking and asking Jesus for more understanding, more healing, more love, more life, more freedom. And at the end of each session is the invitation to go and be with Jesus and bring the questions of your heart to him, to ask God the questions that are stirring in your heart after the session, to seek the Holy Spirit and to show you what he wants to show you in the midst of what you're journeying through. For me, that's what makes it so uniquely, deeply personal and sacred, because the questions of the 18-year-old girl who's there, or the questions of the 81-year-old woman who's there. I love that cute woman who came a couple of years ago. Different, yet same sometimes questions, but God answers them so uniquely, so beautifully for what those hearts need to hear.
Yes, I agree. And those times alone with God after each session are so vitally important and what make these weekends so unique to others. I had never, ever been to a weekend or retreat or conference where we did not have small groups, but instead, after each session, we would go, like you said, Sherry, into these times alone with God and ask him questions that the woman who had been sharing in the session posed for us, our hearts to ask the heart of God, and then to be able to listen and sit in that and journal. And we create a space in a covenant of silence for women to be able to go and have that time. And those are beautiful times and powerful times. I had never experienced that before, and that's where I started recognizing how God was speaking to my heart, and I didn't even know it.
And then I love that, Robin, even though we don't have the organized small group time, but there's such great conversations when all of a sudden you realize at dinner time you're sitting next to a woman and you've got a similar story or not. You just make fast friends around a table or
Mhm.
sitting in rocking chairs or,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, ziplining together, journaling, just that opportunity for those organic conversations.
That makes me think about the space itself when you talk about
Mhm.
zip lines and rocking chairs and all that. So where do we go for these environments? For the men, we go to a camp called Rockbridge, and we've got this one coming up, Heart of a Warrior West in Buena Vista. They're beautiful, epic places, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just talk a little bit, if you would, both of you, the importance of that.
Yes, this is another one of those environments. It's at Windy Gap, and it's another Young Life camp that is in a beautiful setting in the mountains of Western North Carolina,
Near Asheville, yeah.
near Asheville. And there are things to do in the afternoons for free time where Sherry's going to be able to tell us more about that down the road for the women, what's available, some of the activities.
I know we'll have horses.
Yes,
That much I've
horses.
heard.
Yes.
You guys are going to have the horses?
And maybe the zip line and the blog. And there's a little, I don't know if you can call it a lake, but it's a lake.
Yeah.
It's a lake. So swimming, and they're places of beauty just to walk and to hike and to sit on porches and sit together, hang out together, walk together, hike together, or time alone.
So why is
you're
that
not seeing.
important? Why are those places of beauty so important?
What I'm learning is the vital importance of beauty and how God speaks through beauty and how vital beauty is for our hearts as humans. Beauty is healing. Beauty gives space. Beauty points to the Creator, our beautiful Creator God. Beauty speaks, and something that it does for our souls to get away.
Nourishing.
It is nourishing. Beauty is nourishing. Yeah. Getting away in a place like that where there is space to breathe in beauty invites us to the heart of God.
Well, and I'm thinking too, as you describe that, the beauty of putting away your cell phone,
Yeah.
putting away any distraction so that you can be fully engaged.
Yeah.
Because our attention is just so demanded by so many different, some very good sources. I mean, our kids need us. That's important. Our husbands, our friends, our jobs, they need us. But to pull away from that and to be able to get away and leave all of that at home.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
whole other gear. You were describing the lives of women. You could have been describing the lives of men, busyness and going, and picking up, dropping off, and on. And just to have for a few days, third gear, which so many of us, it's not that available to us with what's going on. And for women, particularly the gear down to find a different speed, to be still in order to deepen and live in the deeper space versus all the movement on top. I love what you said about, both of you, Robin, about the conversations with God, conversation with each other, that's deeper. And you're using another word that I think is really important versus knowing. Knowing is something that we tend to champion in the church, but both of you have used a word. I'd love to have a word count. We'll have to go back and look at it. Experience.
Mm-hmm.
You've been using the word experiencing God. I want to make sure that our listeners know how critical that is in experiencing God and what you mean by that. Like you said, having a conversation with God, asking God questions. This is foreign land. It was to me. It's not anymore, but it very much was. What can you offer about the significance of that?
I just want to say, too, that you were making a distinction between the word know and experiencing. In the Greek, in several instances in the New Testament, the word know, the Greek is gnosko, Gnosko, I believe is how it's spelled. And it literally means to experience. It's a knowing by way of experiencing. So it deepens the knowing. It's not just a cerebral head knowledge.
But that's where we've taken
the
academic,
yes.
the theologic, that
Yeah.
we need to
Right.
know the answer. And it's a ABC, it's a multiple choice, it's a true and false versus encountering and experiencing. That's a huge point you're making. What if you could get away for a few days and experience and encounter God in a space that was created just for that, for your heart that was actually created for that?
Right. And for some, that might be a wonderful invitation and sound like I can't wait to get away, and silence maybe, or stillness. You mentioned be still. And for others, that might sound terrifying, to be unplugged, no cell phones, and to have silence and to be known and to be pursued. That can sound terrifying, but maybe that's the invitation.
That's the
of
frontier.
what God
That's the
might
pioneering
be.
we encounter.
That's the only
God.
way we encounter him, is in the stillness. Not the only way, but that's where he meets us beautifully.
Yeah, we all have our favorite things we eat, we watch, we like. And with God, familiarity, that's not a great compliment of your walk with God. Yeah, it's just real familiar. We just have our little ways of doing things. I think God is
It's been the same for the last 30 years,
going
he
to
and
push
I.
us
you know.
into adventure and exploration. So yeah, I can see where
Slippers.
that would be scary for some, for sure.
Or even disrupting.
Yeah.
You know, I'm thinking about that quote that I heard from Robin that first time I went that was so beautifully disrupting. I was totally undone by it. And I'm going to read it because I brought my notebook. But when Robin said that our deep desire is to be loved unconditionally, to be seen, to be known for who we really are, to be valued, esteemed, desired, pursued, fought for, to be precious to someone, to be their beloved, the object of their affection. Our hearts are designed for this by God. And there are days that I still go, wow.
What?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know this again and again and again, experientially, over and over, every minute. I don't want to miss it.
Me
You
too.
want to no-sco it,
Yeah, that's right.
right?
Good one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You're so funny.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about the women who might be listening, or the men who are listening who have women that they love and care for, their moms, their daughters, their wife, or maybe there's women who are listening. How would you speak to some of the conditions? Maybe some women really feel alone. They're isolated for whatever reasons. And how would you encourage women to get away with God? Obviously, the first time you do anything, it's frontier. It's new. It's stepping out. But what would be some of the things you all have heard that are in the way of women taking a step in that direction and trusting God, trusting the weekend, maybe trusting their friend, trusting their husband who's saying, I think you would love this. I think this would be good for you. I know I can get defensive in a second, with implications like, well, I'm okay. I don't need that. Or you don't know me.
Yeah, we'll tell a story about that in a few minutes. But yeah. About you,
Yeah.
Michael, not about me.
But what about those who are feeling those things in the way?
Or what was your experience? Did you have something in the way going the first time that made you more empathetic when you're inviting other women, as Michael described?
Well, I know for me, when I went for the first time, and I love what I get to do now, but some of it was financial. I just didn't know how we would come up with the registration money. And so I loved getting the email from the woman who was coordinating at the time. And it was this sweet, beautiful invitation into, well, let's walk with God in this. Let's ask him how he sees this getting paid for. And she invited me to ask my small group and ask my church, invite them into this journey, this mission, this battle for my heart, because that's really what it is, getting away.
Right.
Getting away is so deeply opposed. And so watching God provide for the registration fee that first year. And I ended up not needing a scholarship from Zoe between my church and some friends and a windfall or two. Our tax return? Just from places that I couldn't have guessed or seen it coming.
Mm-hmm.
God made a way. I would encourage you in that same way. And I'd say, if it is an issue, email me, sherry@zoe.org, and we'll talk about what that looks like to walk with God, how he sees this getting paid. Mm-hmm.
Another thing I think that gets in the way for a lot of women is schedule. And I think even if your heart is the slightest bit stirred, that maybe this might be something that might be good for me, I would encourage you to ask Jesus, is this something for me? Might this be a place where you could meet me? And if so, will you make it happen? Will you walk with me in this and help me get there and help make it happen? And if you're the husband or father or brother, maybe you can help make that happen for your wife or daughter or sister, to help take care of the kids or to just help make it possible. That would be huge. I know some women myself included. I remember when I first experienced a weekend like this, I came back and wanted to bring every friend I knew, and I invited everybody that I knew, and a few came with me. And that is wonderful to be able to say, hey, would you explore this with me? Would you be willing to enter into this journey with me, or come check this out with me? In the very least, it's a girls' getaway together. In the very least, it's a beautiful place near Asheville that we can go and get away. And then another thing about that is a lot of women come alone because they don't have anybody who says yes to them. And I love those women that are courageous enough to come alone because their hearts want more and they are expectant of what God has for them and expectant for God to meet them there. So even if you can't get anybody to come with you, come. And it is amazing to hear the stories from the women. We hear them every year who go alone and tell the stories of how God meets them.
Right.
They're like, I cannot believe who was in the place where I slept, who was in our room. How did you know who I needed to be with in there?
Right.
And women who came alongside them to check on them and see how they were doing, and the connecting over meals. God meets every woman there in unique ways that are stunningly beautiful when you hear the stories.
It's one of the cool things that I, experienced going to the men's weekend, and I know Sherry's intentional about it there as the event coordinator, but also with the women, that everybody that's in the bunkhouse, we try to put people that are geographically near one another in the same bunkhouse. And then that way, if a woman does come by herself, she's going to leave with friends that hopefully are nearby
That's right.
to where she lives so she can continue the journey.
And I
Good.
would say, too, that your heart is important. Your heart matters. If you're listening, dear friend out there, your heart matters. And I think about the woman in 2017 who drove from upstate Illinois to Virginia because her heart needed this. And she was going to move heaven and earth to be there. She knew what she needed, like the one with the issue of blood. She was going to get near enough to Jesus for some healing. I would just encourage you, you're worth it.
Yeah, I thought of one other obstacle, and it's a pretty serious one. I think some men suffer from it. Maybe you can speak to how women wrestle with it, but deserving, the whole idea of someone not feeling like they deserve this time or able to get away. Yes, busyness and schedule and demands, but fear can really creep in some different ways, and they're afraid to ask, or they don't want to be a bother, or maybe it's a deserving issue. And those are, you said, those are such courageous things to overcome, to be so hungry and thirsty that that's not going to keep you. It's really not an issue of that, but that's how it can feel. Fear, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to me? I don't know anybody. Those are all fear-based obstacles. And I think if what you all said was true at the beginning, and there is a particular hatred of the enemy of our hearts for women, he wants to beat that into all of us, that you don't deserve this. You're not qualified for a weekend. This isn't for you. Guilt and shame can just have their whispers and have their way sometimes. It can really be an obstacle. All those things you've mentioned to overcome, what would you say would be some of the most encouraging treasures, presents, gifts of the weekend that you've heard or felt or experienced on your own? So if those are reasons to overcome and why to come to the weekend, what are some of the opportunities for women? You said experiencing God, like how? How could you encourage them that this is what you believe the Deepening Weekend can do for your heart?
Well, I would just say to the woman who doesn't feel like she deserves this, we have a seat for you. There's a seat for you at this table, and it's not about deserving. It is for you. It has your name on it.
Mm-hmm.
Email me. We'll talk about it.
That's good.
Mhm.
What's your email address?
Yeah.
It's still Sherry, Sherry,
Yeah.
at zoe.org, and it'll be on the website.
Yeah. We would say you do deserve
and
this.
You
You
are
do.
You
Mhm.
are worthy.
There's a place
Right.
with your name on it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You are worthy. You are highly valued. And where that takes my heart is to the first time I went to a weekend like this was in 2004. And it was a captivating weekend. And I had no idea about my heart or what my heart needed, but I thought this would help me be better in ministry. And this would be helpful for me as a Christian in my Christian walk with God. And what just wonderfully wrecked me all through the entire weekend was it was about me. Jesus made it about me in how he has been pursuing my heart, that he makes it about each one of us. In creating us, we were in his heart, the intention of his heart since before the beginning of time. He made it about us when he created us and formed us and fashioned us. And when he moved heaven and earth to come to earth, when Jesus came, and the pursuit of our hearts, I saw the heart of God for me that weekend like I never knew it before. That my heart was worthy, that I was worthy. My heart mattered. Like you said, Sherry, your heart matters. I never heard that. I never knew that. And so experiencing that on a deeper level, when I would take some of those questions to God, and I remember the first time with my journal and writing, and I thought, not sure even what this looks like, but I'm just going to start to write. And I just started writing and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. And that was how Jesus was speaking to me. It was like he was in my thoughts and in my writing and revealing things to me and speaking to my heart like I never knew that he could or had before. I'm not an exception to the rule. This is what God does for every woman.
For all of us. Yeah.
Every single one. Yes.
Yeah. And I think the important
Uniquely.
thing to say or to remind people about too, what I'm hearing you say, Robin, is what Jesus told you was, hey, it's not about what you're doing or what you can do.
Absolutely. It is who you are.
Right.
And who I am in you, and a partnership and a glory to my life, how I uniquely reflect his glory and belovedness. And
it wasn't a speaker
kingdom.
telling you that. It wasn't them giving you a list of biblical truths. Those are good. But what you're saying is he told you.
yes. Yeah.
He showed you.
Mhm.
You experienced him.
You were getting downloads from him. How he
Yes.
saw you,
Yes.
who you were to him. And that, I think, is the unique, significant, and very special environment of the Deepening Weekend,
And
to
you
make
do,
space for that.
and you are hearing from other women how they've experienced
Mhm.
him
Yeah.
as well. And that carries a lot of weight for me when I hear another woman's story.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of that during the weekend too. Not a list of how-tos, but
No.
this is what Jesus is showing me and how he's been coming for me.
And that's why if you ask any woman, you'll get lots of different answers.
Mm-hmm.
My notes look very different than the woman sitting next to me because God speaks to me differently.
Yeah, I would imagine there's some women that are frustrated by that a little bit, right? Like, just give me the list of things I'm supposed to do, because we kind of live our lives that way. So why not try to live our life with Jesus that way too? Just give me the list.
Yeah, I was her.
Yeah. Is that true?
And some days I still
Is that
can
right?
be.
He set you
Who
up.
asked you? Nobody asked you.
This turned into a marriage. This could be turned into a
You don't know
marriage
me.
podcast really fast.
Yeah, it can.
So, well, any last thoughts you all would want to share with our friends and allies who are listening? Anything that is stirred that you haven't had a chance to share? And I would love to give you another minute of that before we sign off for this podcast. There's a lot to this, and I love how hard you two work at pursuing, inviting, encouraging, and as we titled this, Engaging the Hearts of Women. It's a hard thing to see done, and it's violently opposed, and love your hearts for the hearts of women. Appreciate that. Anything else that you want to offer or share as we wrap up?
I guess I would just say, if you have questions about the weekend that are kicking around your head, don't let them go unanswered. Feel free. Like I said, email me, email Zoe. Let's answer your questions. You don't have to wonder.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Mic
Yes.
drop. Yeah, what she said.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being with us, Sherry and Robin. Thank you guys for taking the time to share your hearts and for the environment that you're going to create. This is happening September 6th through 8th at Windy Gap Young Life Camp up near Asheville, North Carolina. Registration's open, www.zoweh.org. That's our website. Go to events and you'll see the Women's Deepening Weekend that's there, and opportunity for you to look into all kinds of details and things and have some questions. And you can contact Sherry that way remember, you were made for more.
Mm-hmm.
And with God, there always is more. This could be a great weekend to pull away and find some new wind for the sails of your heart, to find some new seeds to be gardened into these spaces in your heart, and to see what might it be like to walk with God into a weekend where overcoming some of the things that have been in your way for intimacy, oneness, and connectedness with God and with each other. What if there were some things in the way of that, and this is the weekend that God wanted to remove some of those things? I want to give you the last word, Rob.
I was going to say to women who have come before and who might be thinking, been there, done that. I came back probably 6 times because my heart just knew there was life there, and there had been so much for my heart. I thought, I want to go back and get some more of what I missed in the notes. And here, come to find out, God had all new things for me because I was in a very different place that year.
Right.
And he had new packages to deliver to my heart and wanted to uncover more and take me into new places. So even if you have been before, I would encourage you to come back for your heart and to bring some women with you that you know, where you can say, I've tasted this. This is good. Come with me.
Yeah, the beautiful thing about coming to the weekends together is you go home together and there's a lot to talk about. You know, all of a sudden, how did it go, or how are you? It has a whole other invitation into another conversation of walking with God together in the kingdom as sisters, the redemptive sisterhood that is often a result, a fruit of these weekends. So
Yeah, as I've watched you guys as speakers over the years work really hard on your talks, I can testify that it's different every year too. So if you've been before, just to, reiterate that sentiment, Robin, if you've been before, it's different every time. You're in a different place. God's going to meet you differently. The speakers are working on their talks and God's meeting them in the midst of those talks. And so they're delivering a different package that way. So just come. Again, like you said earlier, I think it was you, Michael, the worst thing that happens is it was you, Robin. The worst thing that happens is you've got a weekend away with your friends or just for some solitude,
Rest.
So come out.
Yeah, we'd love to have you join the ladies at this weekend. And so thank you for joining us for the Exploring More podcast. And we'll do some more of these. When I think about engaging the hearts of women, the weekend is just one way. I know there's other resources that we're working on. There's other environments that we're working to create. And thank you, Sherry, and thank you, Robin, for the work that you do and for the passion of your heart to see women's hearts free, including yours. And so until next time on the Exploring More podcast, thanks for being with us. We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoe.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoe on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoe on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.